Good morning and welcome to this course on Trustworthy AI. My name is Sebastian Heil. I'm the Senior Researcher at the Distributed and Self-Organizing Systems Group in Chemnitz University of Technology. And in this course, I want to go through the basics of Trustworthy AI. It will be an introductory course, and we will cover basic principles and the meaning of trustworthy AI. This introduction to trustworthy AI consists of 3 units, and in the first unit we want to start with the foundations of trustworthy AI. We want to discuss what is the meaning of trustworthiness, of trust in the context of AI. In the second unit we will go more into detail here and particularly have a look at the European perspective on trustworthy AI, talk about a very important document that provides guidelines, and also make a little excursion into the US equivalent to that. And then in the third unit, we want to talk about the challenges of trustworthy AI and what makes it hard to actually create trustworthy AI systems. What are the different aspects that you need to address? Here are the learning goals for this introduction to trustworthy AI. So at the end, when you successfully complete the course, you should be able to explain the concepts of trust and trustworthiness in the context of trustworthy AI. You should be also able to name the 3 main components of trustworthy AI and to consistently use the trustworthy AI terminology. Furthermore, you should be able to explain the 7 key requirements of trustworthy AI as they are outlined in the high-level expert group report. You should be able to explain the challenges and the socio-technical nature of these 7 requirements. And also you should be able to assess the trustworthiness of your own AI system against the 7 key requirements. In this first unit, we want to talk about the foundations of trustworthy AI, and that means we will talk about trust and trustworthiness. These 2 are essential concepts of the trustworthy AI domain, and in order to be able to discuss and understand the challenges, the methods and approaches of trustworthy AI, it is important that we first establish a common vocabulary and understanding of these concepts. To do so, we will cover some common definitions for trust and trustworthiness, and we will also look at a basic model of trustworthiness that represents the relationships between these 2 core concepts and also some of the attached properties and the relation to other concepts. So what exactly is trust? Trust is not very easy to define, but we all have an implicit characterization of it in our mind, and I have selected a nice starting quote here, which is, "Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets." This is an implicit characterization of trust as a concept, and it points to the fact that it is very, very hard to establish trust, especially when you try to do so in a systematic, targeted way. But it is very, very easy by a single mishap, by a single error or mistake that you do, to lose the trust in your solution, in your system, in a person as well. Easy to define trust in a straightforward, strict and mathematical way, as trust intrinsically is a topic about humans and the interaction between humans. So it is a topic studied in fields like psychology or the social sciences. In this slide, you will find a relatively common definition of trust, which is also being used in the AI high-level expert group report that we will cover a little bit later. We see the definition has 3 parts, and it says trust is being viewed as a set of specific beliefs dealing with benevolence, competence, integrity, and predictability, the so-called trusting beliefs. This is important because it establishes that trust is not something factual. It is not a form of knowledge. And in the second part, it says the willingness of one party to depend on another in a risky situation, so-called trusting intention. 2 key thoughts that we can take out of this definition here. A is that trust is always a relationship of dependency, one party depending on the other, and that for trust there needs to be some risk involved, a situation that bears a risk. Of course, this definition is not without problems. If you look at it, terms such as benevolence, competence, integrity, etc., are relatively vague, generalized categories, and it's not easy to turn them into something that can be measured in a direct way if you would want to quantify trust, for instance. So let's start building our own conceptual model of trust. And from the definition on the previous slide, we already know that trust is a relationship of dependency. This relationship is a directed relationship from the truster onto the trustee. And it is also not implicitly symmetric. For instance, I may have trust in our chancellor, but that does not imply that the chancellor automatically also has trust in me. And also, it's an active-passive relationship. So the truster is an active person, aware of the trust. The trustee itself may not be aware of all of the trusting parties that place trust in it. The next ingredient for our trust model is the context. Trust as a relationship is always context dependent. The trust that the truster places in the trustee is only valid in a given context, and it may be completely different in a different context. For instance, I may trust in my dentist to correctly analyze my teeth and to come up with a proper treatment plan if that is necessary. But this does not mean that I have the same level of trust in my dentist to handle my finances in a good way. We know this part from the definition. Trust is only relevant if there is some form of a perceived risk. If we have a risk-free situation, there is nothing to trust about. So trust requires something that we do not want to happen, something that we believe will not happen because of the trustee, because of the characteristics of the trustee, or something that the trustee can influence. Now we get to the trustworthiness itself. Trustworthiness is something that we project into the trustee. You can consider it something like a property of the trustee, but, and that's important, it is not independent of the specific trust relationship. So the trustworthiness that we assign to a certain trustee is related to that particular trust relationship, to that context and that particular risk. The trustworthiness that we project onto the trustee then influences the trust itself, which means trust is not a binary thing trust is being influenced by trustworthiness in that sense that it can be higher, it can be lower. You can lose the trust completely, or trustworthiness may be increased by properties of the trustee. This basic model here is coming from human trust relationships. So we have a human truster and a human trustee. And when we talk about human trustees, then the trustworthiness can be defined or can be broken down into attributes like the ability, benevolence, and integrity. Ability, for instance, I believe that my dentist has received proper training, has finished his formal education with good grades, and for that reason knows what they are doing. Just because he wants to do good, if he cannot do good, then I don't trust. Benevolence, the other side, the dentist may be very well trained and knowing what he has to do, but I need to trust the dentist that he has no other reasons for wanting to harm me, for not treating me well. So benevolence, integrity goes into a similar direction. We need to believe that the trustee is consistently acting according to ethical principles, values that may be the principles and values of the profession of being a medicine caregiver, that may be a general societal set of principles and values. All the things we discussed so far are related to the human to human trust, a human truster into a human trustee. Now, what happens if we replace the trustee side with an artificial intelligence trustee, an AI trustee? The big question mark here is, how do we then define, how do we understand trustworthiness, as I have said, as properties that the human truster, to some degree, projects into that AI trustee. We cannot blindly apply the trustworthiness aspects from a human trustee. Think about benevolence, for instance. What is the meaning of benevolence if we talk about an AI? How do we determine if it is good willing, if it's willing to not harm? Or the integrity perspective, which was about consistency, acting according to values and principles. It is not at all trivial to build that into an artificial intelligence. So that is why trustworthy AI, trustworthiness of artificial intelligence systems, of AI solutions, is an ongoing topic of research that we want to cover in this course.